Hi, and welcome back to our Gait for Human Potential video series. I'm Carol Montgomery, physical therapist, somatic educator, and integral human gait expert. If I could pick one movement pattern that everyone should do before they start an exercise program, this would be the one. The name of this movement exploration is called vertical crawling on the back. It would benefit so many people, regardless of their orthopedic or neurological diagnosis, because embedded in the movement pattern is the fundamental basics for sitting comfortably, walking, reaching, learning how to recover the ability to shift your weight or your center of mass to stand on one leg. At the end of the movement exploration, I'll summarize for you the anatomical and the biomechanical pearls that are hidden in this gem of a movement. The movement pattern, because it's done lying on your back, signals something very important to the brain, and I dare say your mind, regardless about walking upright. It's something that you would not necessarily be tracking. So, like most of our guided movement explorations, we begin this one with a pre-assessment. So if you've been sitting, I would like you to come to standing. Now, walk in place 3 to maybe 4 steps, and then stop. Keep your eyes focused forward, and I want you to notice your feet, particularly the shape of each foot. If you were to draw an outline around the foot, you might more clearly get a sense of the boundaries of your footprint. Standing there, can you discern which foot is heavier into the ground, the right foot or the left foot? Or another way of saying that is which footprint would leave a deeper impression into the floor if I were to slide a piece of thin foam cushion underneath your feet? Which one would be heavier? Now, actually look down at your feet, and I want you to notice the space that's between the feet. Just take inventory, and we'll notice once again after we've done the movement what that space. See if there's any change. Good. Now, one last thing. I would like you to walk forward about 10 to 15 feet, turn around, and then come back. Preferably, if you can just walk a straight line, that would be great. If not, that's fine. But I do want you to notice that footprint that was a little heavier in standing, do you notice if the same foot gets a little heavier when you're walking? So if you were walking on thin foam, would the footprint leave a little deeper on the right or on the left when you're walking away from and then toward your mat? Good. Now, let that all go. Come to lie on your back on your mat. So come to lie on your back with your arms down by your side, palms resting on your mat, fingertips facing the direction of the bottom of the mat. Let your knees bend. Find a comfortable distance between the back of your heel and your sit bone. Get a sense of the weightedness of your pelvis. Does it feel like one side of the pelvis, or for some people, they call this area back in here their hip, which is actually really part of the pelvis, as the hip itself is really in the groin crease. But start to get a sense if one side feels a little heavier, as though that you're leaning into your mat a little bit more on the right or the left, or does it feel pretty even? Just notice this imaginary line that we're going to draw that goes from the side of the pelvis through the torso and up toward and into the armpit itself. So it would just like follow the seams of your shirt or your pants. And notice if the seam that goes from the right armpit to the right side of the pelvis or the hip, get a sense of its length. And compare that to the left. Like for me, although I'm lying here on the mat, it feels as though my right side is a little shorter than it is on the left. And now start to notice your breath. For some, when I just initially say that, there's this moment where we all start to inhale. But I want you to be observers of the breath. And we want to keep the breath cycling. So we're not going to pinch it off. We're not going to hold it. We're not going to take deeper breaths. We're just going to breathe nice and easy. Because really, we're only going to do one simple movement. One simple movement of shortening the lines on either side of our torso. But we're going to do that from 4 different perspectives. 3 of those perspectives will keep us stationary on the mat. 1 perspective is going to allow us to move, allow us to walk and to stand on one leg easily from lying on your back. We're going to translate standing on one leg while you are lying on your back. We're going to trick the brain into realizing and sensing that it could actually stand on one leg and walk on the back. So let's begin by feeling the fingertips of the right hand resting on the mat. Begin to glide your whole hand in the direction towards your right heel. And as you draw your hand toward the heel, of course your elbow is going to come and then your shoulder will come and then return back. So a couple of times drawing your right hand towards the right heel. And right away you get a sense that that line along the right side of the torso gets a little short. Your right armpit starts to come towards the right hip. And for some of you, your right hip starts to shrug towards the right armpit. The next time you find yourself in the middle, stop. Now, let's do it again and just notice how there is movement happening on the left side that is actually very different than the right. So as the right hand slides towards the right heel, can you allow the left fingertips to move away from the left heel? Or another way of saying that is let the line on the left side of the torso grow long. Now, for some of you, you keep your head right in the center. So the back of the head is actually not moving. You may feel the left shoulder coming closer to the left ear, but the back of the head stays stationary. Try that just a couple of times for you who are doing something different. So as the right fingertips move towards the right heel, the back of the head stays in the center. There's a little tip of the head, if you will, toward the left shoulder and the left ear. And the next time you find yourself in the middle, pause. Now, what if we take our left fingertips and move our left fingertips toward the left heel, shortening the line of the left torso and lengthening the line on the right torso from the armpit to the hip or the pelvis. And this may be a little bit easier for some folks to keep the head in the center. Of course, the head is tilting. It's just not moving along the mat. Right ear shrugs towards the right shoulder, or the right shoulder shrugs towards the right ear as the left fingertips move toward the left heel. And then pause in the middle. Let's try something a little different. This time, as those left fingertips start to move towards the left heel, let the head be light enough so that the head itself starts to slide toward the left heel, following the left shoulder. And as you start to come back up, let the right fingertips move towards the right heel, letting the back of the right head slide towards the right heel. So passing through the center, reaching for the left heel, using your left fingertips. No hurry, no change in your breath, making it easy. Initiating the movement by sliding the hand down toward the heel. Feeling how the back of the head sliding, following the shoulder of the hand that is moving down. In order to be light in the head, there's something that has to happen in the front of the belly and the lower abdomen. Feel how there's some nice tension, some contraction generated on the front of the torso, the front of the abdomen, as there is this side bending back and forth. And the next time you find yourself in the middle, pause. Now, let's initiate this movement from a different place. So I want you to take your hands, bend them at the elbow, and interlace your hands so that you can make a basket so that you could put your hands behind the back of your head, so the back of your head will rest in your hands. And this time, initiate that same movement of side bending to the right and side bending to the left. But now the fingertips aren't going to initiate the movement, but the tip of the elbow is. So let the right tip of the elbow move towards the right heel. And of course, it's easier to sense how your head in its basket is carried to the right. And then now returning back through the center, pass through the center, and let the left elbow move towards the direction of the left heel. And do that a couple of times, really focusing the movement of the right elbow towards the right heel, the left elbow towards the left heel. Feeling how the back of the hands are sliding and the trunk really is tilting to the left. The torso is bending. Sense how the armpit goes towards the shrugging of the same side hip or pelvis. So as my left elbow slides towards the left heel, my left hip shrugs towards my left armpit. And of course, that changes when we go to the right. And you might start to notice that the soles of the feet seem a little bit lighter. Like for instance, every time the left elbow gets towards the left heel, could you allow that same foot to be a little light? And then as the right hand slides towards the right heel, the right foot gets a little light. Left elbow towards the left heel. Right elbow towards the right heel. And the next time you find yourself in the middle, let that go. Unlace your hands. Bring them down by your side. Rest. So we've initiated this side bending movement from our tips of our fingers, our hands sliding toward the heels. We've had our hands behind our head and let our elbows initiate the movement. Same movement of the torso, just a different focus, just a different place to put our attention. And now this third place is going to be in the web space of the hands. So we're going to continue to interlace our hands again and put our interlaced hands behind our head. But this time, as I bring my right elbow towards the right heel, I'm going to initiate that movement using my left hand. The web space of my left hand is going to push into the web space of my right hand. So now take your hands, interlace them, place your hands behind your head. Now for some of you, if your elbows don't rest completely on the mat, that's just fine. This works well if you want to keep your elbows lifted a little bit towards the ceiling, especially if you were having some kind of shoulder discomfort. This also works well if you have a shoulder problem and you want to take the back of one of your hands and place it on your forehead and hold the head in the basket with just one hand. That would work too. So I'm going to initiate this movement using my left hand. The left hand is going to push the right hand and the right elbow toward my right foot. To return over to the left, the web space of my right hand is going to push. And to move over to the other side, we are starting to get a sense that the right side of my body, my right side of my hand, can initiate the fold. So my hand itself is initiating the movement of side bending. The web space of my left hand is pushing into my right, and that allows my right elbow to move towards the right heel. And as my right hand pushes into my left, it allows my left elbow to move towards the left heel. And I clearly start to feel that whichever side I'm moving to, that footprint, that heel actually can start to lift. I can entirely lift my entire foot from the ground as I start to use my left hand to push me all the way over into my right elbow towards the right heel. And I push all the way over into my left hand, my left elbow towards the left heel. And at the same time I'm starting to make that movement, I notice that my pelvis is actually getting a little lighter. Now, for some of you, you may have this sense that the knees are tilting from side to side. That's a nice movement, of course, but it's not the movement that we're looking for. So even though I'm letting my elbows move towards my same heel, my knees, I want them to stay more vertical. All right, so this is what we would call standing. The knees do not tilt in either direction. They stay so that the kneecaps point toward the ceiling. The next time you come to the middle, pause, release your hands, let them be at your side. And now our last movement, our last place where we will initiate this side bending from, is from the soles of the feet. Let's see how we can start to do that. So begin to interlace your hands again. Place them behind your head, the head in the basket. And let's start with using the left hand, bringing the right elbow toward the right heel. And lift that right foot from the ground. Place it somewhere close to the sit bone. Now, right here, as the torso is folded, is side bent to the right elbow is toward the right heel. In order to get over to the other side, the left elbow to the left heel, can you begin to press down with the right foot? That will allow you to carry the left elbow and torso toward the left foot. Now my left foot is very light, so I have the option here that I can place it anywhere. So I'm going to place it close to my sit bone. And I'm going to start to push down into the ground. That actually starts to push me headward along my mat. At the same time, I'm able to side bend to the right. And now my right foot is free. My right foot can go down into the ground and can begin to push. And I begin to carry my hands and my head and my torso as I push myself towards the top of my mat. I'm also side bending and allowing my torso, my line from my left elbow to my left hip to get a little short. And now my left foot is in a great place. And now all of a sudden,
I am actually having my torso side bending, my pelvis is light enough that I'm actually walking off the top of my mat, and I am crawling in a vertical direction and signaling to my brain that I am actually, for one moment, standing on one leg and really lengthening my torso and getting long. Good. Now let that go. Let your hands be down at your side. And you've effectively crawled off your mat. So if you're looking in the video, you'll see that I have left the screen. Now from where you are at, just notice, did the weightedness of your torso or your pelvis change? Is it a little more even? How about the heaviness of your footprint? And the line that we drew initially from armpit to pelvis. For me, my right armpit to pelvis line was a little short, and it's evened out. And notice for yourself if you can sense that nice, easy, smooth breath. Good. And when you're ready, roll over to your side. Resting a moment here. And when you're ready, let yourself return to the standing position. And before you hurry away, if you could, take a moment to stand. Let's review our pre-assessment. Do you remember what that was? You're standing there and you begin to sense the outline of your feet. And you recall which foot was heavier or left a deeper footprint. Just notice for yourself if that has changed. Is there a more equal distribution across the feet? And when you look down at your feet, has the space between the feet changed? And now take that walk forward, maybe 10 to 15 feet, and then turn around again. Just noticing for yourself, was the foot that was more heavier on the ground, has it smoothed out a bit? Good. Now, let's wrap up this video of vertical crawling on the back by taking a look at first, why does this somatic intervention, why is it important? Why would it matter to you? And then second, what were those biomechanical and anatomical gems I spoke of earlier? First of all, let's take a look at why it matters. I mean, obviously, first, the reason why we think it matters is because we're trying to help you discover and restore healthy gait patterns. And that's the most optimal gait that you can produce at any given time, given any neurological or orthopedic condition or any experience that's gone in your life. So we're looking for restoration of healthy gait patterns. But something that you may not realize until it is gone is these are a few other things that we think might be important. Take a look. For most of us, we hardly ever recognize that reaching above our head or out to the side or doing our routine hygiene care, whether it is blow drying our hair, putting deodorant on, or doing any type of toilet care or cleaning, all those movements involve some type of side to side or bending that you experienced in the vertical crawl. Particularly the balance reflexes, your equilibrium reactions depend on your ability to side tilt the head, the torso, and the pelvis very quickly and unconsciously. And when you can master that vertical crawling, you start to call back some of the whole body integration. That means these adjustments and alignments along body parts that have been dormant or sleepy or have amnesia that you haven't been using during activities of daily living. Of course, we talked about healthy gait patterns, but there is a lot of information circling on the ability to stand on one leg and how that will help and reduce fall risk. Standing on one leg is markedly involved in the vertical crawl because for a moment in time, that's exactly what you're doing. Now, let's take a look at something else. In Integral Human Gait, we look to other fields of study to help us understand and educate what it means to have a healthy gait pattern and to have whole body integration. The field of kinematics, which it's the study of the geometry of movement, the principles of movement. We particularly call on this field to help us understand what is going on in vertical crawling on the back that can translate into functional movement patterns and definitely a healthy gait pattern. The three areas are thoracic spine mobility, lumbar spine neutrality, and the concept of being able to take our center of mass. And this is this invisible place that exists in our lower pelvis, being able to take that invisible place and cross it from one aspect to the midline to the other. Let's take a closer look at how vertical crawling on the back achieved our goals in those three areas. Now, let me break down for you how we used position and movement initiation to target those gateways. First, let's take a look at movement of the thoracic spine. So in Integral Human Gait, we are looking at specifically the upper 6 thoracic vertebra versus the lower 6 thoracic vertebra and their associated rib pairing. So when we're freeing up the upper thoracic spine mobility, we did something with head position and with movement initiation through the fingertips. When our hands are down by our sides and we are reaching for our heels using our fingertips, and we keep our head in the center, relatively it moves from side to side, but it doesn't cover a lot of distance or real estate on the mat. It's more of a tilting from side to side that goes on. When we have that type of constraint of keeping the back of the head in one place tilting, then what that does is it starts to impact the lower cervical spine and the upper thoracic spine. Conversely, when you start to use that same fingertip movement initiation, but you allow the head to actually travel with the fingertips or the hand, you're actually allowing the head to cover more real estate. Then you have shifted the side bending component to a lower aspect in the thoracic spine, to more of the lower six and their paired associated ribs along with that. But then when I ask you to place your hands interlaced and bring your head to rest in the basket that the hands make and initiate the movement through the elbows, you start to get a little bit more proportional side bending that takes place along the upper and lower ribs and the thoracic spine. It's a very different look when you see it on the video, and hopefully when you experience it for yourself. Now, the other time that we used position to constrain and to impact the vertebra was when I asked you to keep the knees more vertical and not let the knees tilt from side to side. Although I said it was a great movement, when you keep the knees in the upright position, what you do immediately in that position is that's your first attempt to restore this lumbar spine to its state of neutrality. When you look at how the lumbar spine is designed architecturally to move, it's designed to move forward and back. It's really not designed to bend side to side or to rotate. That's very different than the thoracic spine. The thoracic spine was meant to bend side to side and to rotate. It's most limited actually in forward to back movement because of the ribs. So when you keep your knees vertical, when you constrain that position, constrained here means don't let the knees tilt. You start to initiate keeping that lumbar spine, calling it back to be in a more neutral position. We are looking for restoring this place of neutrality of the lumbar spine during our walking pattern, both in the stance phase of gait, that's standing on one leg momentarily, but also we want neutrality during the swing phase as well. But this vertical crawling on the back really captures how to keep that lumbar spine in neutral. Now, when you start to initiate movement through the web space of the hand, it starts to begin to free up the foot from the ground. When the foot is free from the ground, one aspect lifting, there's always another aspect preparing or ready to press. It's kind of like a teeter-totter moment in the integral human gait principle. We speak of this a lot through our different movement explorations, but it is so prevalent here. So once the foot finds its place and begins to press through the sole of the foot, the footprint, it will transmit pressure up the leg and into the spine so that the lumbar spine actually begin to flex and become more in a neutral place. You might feel that there's less incurve in the back. That might be another way to help you understand what's going on there when you're laying on the back. The other incredible thing that the foot does when it starts to initiate the side bending is that the center of mass, your pelvis itself, begins to actually become lifted from the floor and has this capacity to move right and left across the imaginary midline, so that when the foot prepares itself to push against the ground, the mass is carried up and over and stacks, if you will, over the standing foot, and you are pushed headward toward the top of the mat. And strangely enough, at the same time you are pushed headward and the center of mass has stacked up over the foot, there is this beautiful side bending component that you see taking place in the torso and in the pelvis itself. They both are tilting in such a way so that we have elongation on the side that the foot is pressing and that the center of mass has stacked over, and that we have the folding proportionally of the thoracic spine and the ribs and the tilting of the pelvis on the side of the leg or the foot that is lifting. The leg or foot that is lifting is actually the swing phase of gait. And alternating from side to side of the pressing and the alternating of the side to side component of side bend, you are able to walk off your mat, which translates into the walking phase of gait. And now, not only are the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine, and your center of mass, those are all free for not only a healthy gait, but they're also free and restorative to other functions of daily life. So that's why this vertical crawling on the back is so important to me. I use it quite a bit for my own health. So I hope that you find that it is beneficial for you and for the people that you work with.